office. That incident of going to the Attorney General's office is, I think, sort of dramatizes how we all think that we're, in a sense, contribute to our own destiny, but things that happen are all serendipitous. I had a matter at the time with Richard Upton, and he was then Speaker of the House. Perkins Bass was President of the Senate. Lane Dwinell was Chairman of Ways and Means, and Sherman Adams had just become governor in New Hampshire in January '49. Gordon Tiffany was the Assistant Attorney General. The Attorney General's office at that time was manned by a staff of Attorney General, Assistant Attorney General, a research assistant, and a law assistant. The research assistant was Marion Alexander, who was known for generations to the legislators who would run down the statutes and do a lot of their preparatory work. And Warren Waters was the law assistant. As I say, I had this matter with Richard Upton, and Gordon Tiffany had just announced that he was resigning as Assistant Attorney General. Dick Upton was in my office on the matter we had, and I casually said to him, "Dick, who's going to succeed Gordon Tiffany as Assistant Attorney General?" He said, "God, I don't know." He said, "The governor's gone up to Lincoln over the weekend. I don't know if this has been discussed." And he left and went a long flight of stairs that went down from our office. In a few minutes, I heard him coming back up. And he stuck his head in the door and he said, "You wouldn't like that job, would you?" And I said, "Dick, it never even occurred to me. I'm happy and settled where I am. My inquiry was really academic. I was just curious to..." Well, he'd planted the seed. I started to think about it and began to look at the people who'd been Assistant Attorney General, looked at the list. It was a damned imposing list. Judge Matthews, Joe Matthews, who had been in the court, had Dudley Orr, John Carlton, Thornton Lorimer, Frank Kennison. I said, boy, this is certainly not a job that leads nowhere. This is a very significant list. So I spoke to Dud about this, and he said, "Well, if you'd like to apply for that job, Bill, go ahead, feel free to do it." He said, "I think it's the most marvelous experience for a young lawyer. It was for me." I spoke to Thornton Lorimer. He said, "It's the best job in the United States for a young lawyer." He said, "You'll get experience, opportunities way beyond your time. You get to know all the judges. You get to know lawyers all over the state. You get responsibility much quicker than you would otherwise, and you have the challenge of representing the public interest." And the Assistant Attorney General, the Attorney General's office, really represented all the state departments. You got to know everybody in the State House extremely well. Anyway, I thought about it, and said, "I think I'd like to take a run." I think the next Thursday or some later part of the week, I called Dick Upton and said, "Dick, I think I'd like to apply for that job after all that you mentioned to me." And I said, "But how do I go about doing it?" He said, I don't know. He said, "Let me find out and I'll get back to you." He called me shortly thereafter and he said, "Can you meet me in the governor's office in an hour?" And I said, "Certainly." So I met Dick in the office, and we walked in to meet Governor Adams, who never spent a lot of time talking about too much. And Richard introduced me and said, "This is Bill Green, and he's interested in becoming Assistant Attorney General. He's had somewhat limited experience, but he's got some maturity because of a late start." And he said, "I've had a number of dealings with him, and I think he has the competence and the capability to do the job, and it warrants very serious consideration." He said, I think he'd be up to whatever the requirements are." So the governor looked at me and said, "You got a temper?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And he said, "Well, can you keep it?" Well, I said, "I proceed in the theory that lawyers don't get paid to lose their tempers, but I'm afraid on occasion I perhaps lose it, but I try not to." Well, he said, thank you very much for coming by, and I'll give this consideration. That was the